Hello there, I've managed to escape from my box. I'm in Spain at the Sunway Sitges International Chess Festival. Well, as you can just about see, this is the view from my balcony. That's the Mediterranean behind me. It's an absolutely beautiful place on the coast. This is just down from Barcelona, about half an hour drive from Barcelona, and it's a wonderful atmosphere. Today is really sunny. And well, it's not just great outside, but it's great inside as well. There are so many events going on here, not just chess. There are different open tournaments, Swiss system tournaments, but there are blitz tournaments, there are chess films in the evening. What else is there to do? Well, you can take bikes out and ride along the front. There are also things like tortilla making masterclasses, tapas cooking, and also wine tasting. That's going to be today, so my commentary is going to be kind of interesting. There's also some great chess being played, and well, there are hundreds of players here. Many young players, many from India, including Nihal Sarin, Gukesh, and Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa, one of the youngest grandmasters in the world. He's 14 years old, and well, he's playing extremely well at the moment. Just came from London, where he won the London Chess Classic Open tournament, and he's probably going to go over 2600 on the next rating list, so he is making great strides. So I want to show you his fourth round game against Nino Batsiashvili from Georgia. Now, she's grandmaster. She's rated 2447. She is no mug at all. 2015 in the Qatar Masters first round, she drew with Magnus Carlsen, so she's capable of playing some very good chess. Let's see what happened. So Batsiashvili with the white pieces, and Pragg played a King's Indian. Now Batsiashvili plays an enterprising line with h3. This is a line that well, I've looked at before on my channel actually, and I personally like this strategy very much for white. You try and expand on the king side with pawn to g4, and in that way you try and actually prevent black from breaking out. Of course, the normal move here is to castle on the king side, but Pragg played e5, and this is very clever actually, as we're going to see. There is a lot to this move. Okay, it's the normal King's Indian move. Now I think if white takes here, of course you can displace the king, but actually you can't really exploit that in any way. Black is going to play c6 and probably king c7 and knight out. Actually black is very safe there. So really I think if white wants to get any advantage, you have to play in the standard King's Indian way with d5, closing the position. It's pretty normal. And now a5. But you notice that Pragg hasn't castled, and this has an enormous bearing on the position. So white plays g4. This is very standard. You're basically preventing black from playing f5 at some point. And now knight d7. The knight comes around c5. So these knights can potentially be quite threatening when they reach these c5 and b4 squares, and also that leaves open some lines on the king side, so as we'll see. Now let me show you one of the ideas behind delaying castling. So if white starts this pawn storm on the king side, then actually you can play h5 and block the position out. Obviously this simply wouldn't be possible if the king had castled on the king side. And once the position closes, then actually black can castle on the king side, and at the right moment of course potentially break with f6 or f5. But Batsiashvili played knight e2, and this allows black to play in a very positional way. This is very interesting. So now Pragg switches strategy. He spotted that he can get away with bishop f6, and he starts to control the g5 and h4 squares. So queen d2, that prevents black from playing bishop g5, but h6, and now there's nothing to stop this bishop coming into g5. Of course, if that pawn is taken, then g5 is possible, trapping bishop on h6. So white continues with castling. Bishop g5. There we are. This is the idea. So a very positional way of playing. Black exchanges off the dark squared bishop. Now sometimes that bishop can be the absolute pride and joy of black's position if this manages to open, if the diagonal opens. But this is a very different way of playing. So black is keeping control, some control over the f4 and h4 squares, exchanging off those dark squared bishops, which also means that black will have greater control over these queenside squares. So it's possible just to allow this exchange here. Let's say king b1, it's a useful move anyway. And black would exchange, and Pragg said after the game that he was happy to play this endgame, and he thought the position was about equal. And I think that's about right. I don't think black can claim an advantage yet, but black is very comfortable here, having exchanged off those bishops. But Batsiashvili wanted to keep the bishops on the board and try to exploit black's, well, let's say, slowness of strategy, because black, of course, hasn't castled yet. So after f4, this has to be exchanged. And knight e5. So this is the problem with playing f4, that it gives black this absolutely wonderful square for the knight on e5. And at the moment that can't really be challenged, but white is ahead in development. And now queen e7. Of course, it's very risky to castle kingside when there's potential to open up lines with h4. So queen e7. Now you'll notice how canny it was for Pragg to play e5 in the opening without first castling. Knight b5, and that's a tricky move, because if Pragg continues, let's say, with bishop d7, then c5 is possible, trying to break things open. I mean, taking would allow d6, and that looks awful. Of course, black could escape by casting, but then h4 starts to get very tricky. You know, the h6 pawn is a little bit loose. Once things open up, that's very difficult. So knight b5 played, and now b6 basically shuts things down on the queen side, making sure that c5 isn't coming. So it's a very solid move. And now it seems to me that white should just nudge the king in the corner. The king isn't particularly well placed on c1. Let's get it into a safer position. I think it's actually quite difficult for white to find a good strategy here, in spite of having, you know, some space. We would like to push with h4, but actually that can just be captured, and then the bishop will come back to f6. That knight on e5 just holds everything together. It's very hard for white to really, you know, break. But Batsiashvili comes up with another idea. She played rook h2. Bishop d7 played, and then she played the rook to h1. So if she gets in h4, then the position is complicated. But simply bishop h4 from Pragg. And the funny thing is, it's not advisable to attack the bishop, because bishop g3 checkmates the rook on h2 and just wins an exchange. Actually, in many positions in the King's Indian, you wouldn't want to give up this wonderful dark squared bishop. But here, with that knight dominating in the middle of the board, in fact, it's perfectly okay. So bishop h4 just kind of stymies white's play. Knight d4 played. Well, that does look at some potentially tasty squares. I mean, c6 notably, but at the moment, you know, that square is covered. All the whites, the squares that the knight is attacking are well covered. Knight c5, there you go. Black's knights are actually much more effectively placed than white's knights. So this knight is attacking e4, weak pawn. The knight on e5 is hitting, well, so many tender spots. But actually, if you look at white's knights, basically they're covered. The squares they're attacking are all covered. So this pawn needed defending, so therefore queen c2. Now, castles is still possible here, castles kingside, but Pragg played castles queenside, and this is kind of the culmination of his opening strategy, you could say. It was very clever that he delayed castling in the opening, because it's given him options according to how white was attacking. And in this case, going to the queen side is clearly the safest, and it gives black some very interesting options. King b1, I think that's indicative of the fact that actually Batsiashvili is running out of ideas. I mean, in some senses it's a useful move, but still it's it's hard for white to find a plan here actually. So rook e8. Okay, we can see that there's more power directed against the pawn on e4, and that's kind of tasty also when there's a couple of bishops lined up on the e-file as well. And now rook f1 should be played to actually give this rook some room, as we'll see in a moment. b3 played, understandably, you know, wants to protect this one, but watch what happens now. h5. This was obviously overlooked by Pragg's opponent, and this just blows up the position in black's favour. In fact, Pragg realised he could have done the move before, but felt that he just wanted to, well, he gambled really that his opponent wouldn't have seen that this was possible. But this is really effective now. So black threatens to take a pawn. And what can white do? Well, there's a problem here. Batsiashvili took, and now g5. And unfortunately this knight simply doesn't have a good square to go to. It's incredible how this completely wrecks white's position. So for example, if the knight goes back to d3, then everything gets exchanged. And here's the point of Pragg playing rook e8, because now this one drops, and well, I think it's pretty clear that's an absolutely hopeless position with the rook attacking these two and this one about to take that one. Well, if I don't think white is going to survive many moves there. So Batsiashvili played knight g2, but it's the same problem as we saw before, that the bishop comes to g3 and this rook is trapped. I mean, it's rather comical. It's not just that, actually. This knight on g2 is in a pitiful position. It's dominated by the pawn here, actually. Well, it spins round trying to find a square, but it's really not very pleasant. And now, so Pragg is the exchange up. Still got to win this, but his technique was very good. g4, so this starts the process of opening the position, and that e-pawn is about to drop. h6, that's the only asset really in white's position. It's far advanced, but it's not really going anywhere, and black is crashing through the middle of the board. But there was a very nice finish. Stick around. Let's see how Pragg does it. And now he turns towards white's king. Yeah, he said after the game that, of course, he could have just exchanged off into an endgame, and of course that's winning. But he saw that white's king was open. Yeah, it certainly is with these advanced pawns here, and thought, okay, let's try and finish this off. And finish it he did very nicely. Because actually the king is not secure on a3. Great move. a4, really beautiful move, cracking open the a file. If that pawn advances or takes, so for example here, then this pawn is fatally weak. Knight e1 attacks the queen, opens this up, followed by rook to e4, and you can see white's king in desperate trouble there. So let's go back. a4. So bishop d4 played, attacking the rook in the corner, but that's not so interesting because after this, well, black doesn't need to slow down here. Beautiful move, king b7, and now black is going to attack from this side as well. Check. And really, the only reason white didn't resign was because she was actually in time pressure and was just making quick moves. And that one is the end of the game, as white has to give up the queen to avoid mate, and that's obviously absolutely horrible. Well, what a crushing great game, and yeah, I found that really instructive actually. Let's just go back here. You'll notice how clever it is to play e5 before castling to keep black's options open, and that one is worth remembering. So great play from Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa. That's just the fourth round. We've still got 6 games to go. Still, of course, wide open. Many players in this tournament, but it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out on top. Thanks for watching. Remember, like, comment, share and subscribe. If you want to support the channel, do check out the links to patreon.com as well as PayPal as well. Thanks for watching.